There are certain moments in martial arts history that almost everyone recognizes. The 1964 Long Beach event, where a young fighter shocked the crowd. The 1973 release of Enter the Dragon, the film that turned a martial artist into a global icon. But there's another date, one quiet evening in the fall of 1966 that you won't find in most history books. No cameras were rolling, no reporters were present, no headlines were printed the next day. It happened behind the heavy, steel-reinforced doors of the San Diego Naval Base. Picture the setting. 200 of the toughest men in the U.S. Navy filled the room. Officers, decorated veterans, men who earned respect through rank and battle scars. In the center stood a single figure, a 25-year-old man in a black kung fu outfit, weighing barely 130 pounds. The mood wasn't welcoming. It was tense, suspicious. They didn't see a master. They saw a television sidekick, an actor, a dancer. Then one officer, huge, nearly twice his size, famous for his expertise in hand-to-hand combat training, decided he'd had enough. He stood up and walked straight to the center of the room. He didn't want a lecture. He didn't want a demonstration. He wanted a fight. "Stop dancing," he told Bruce. "Fight a real martial artist." The room went silent. You could almost hear a heartbeat echo. The officer smiled, confident this would be over quickly. Most of the men expected Bruce to back down. He didn't. What happened next lasted only 10 seconds. 10 seconds that shattered assumptions. 10 seconds that stunned 200 hardened warriors into silence. 10 seconds so shocking that the Navy reportedly classified the incident report for years. This wasn't a movie scene. It was the night Bruce Lee walked into the lion's den and walked out as the only king. To understand why this moment mattered, you have to go back to 1966. This was before worldwide fame, before the yellow jumpsuit, before his face appeared on posters from Tokyo to Texas. At the time, Bruce was stuck between two worlds. Among traditional Chinese martial arts masters, especially in Chinatown, he was seen as a rebel. He had broken an unwritten rule by teaching non-Chinese students. To them, he was a troublemaker giving away secrets. To the American public, he was simply Kato on the Green Hornet, the quiet sidekick, not the star. But inside the martial arts community, something different was happening. Whispers were spreading. There was talk of a young instructor in Los Angeles who moved faster than the eye could track, a man who rejected rigid forms and memorized routines, a fighter who believed only in what worked, direct, efficient, no wasted motion. Those rumors eventually reached Admiral Thomas H. Moore at the San Diego Naval Base. At the time, the Navy wanted to modernize its hand-to-hand combat program. The old boxing and wrestling manuals from World War II felt outdated. They wanted something sharper, faster, more practical. An invitation was sent, not as a movie celebrity, but as a challenge disguised as a guest lecture. The note was simple: demonstration of the effectiveness of close combat. Bruce accepted immediately. He wasn't interested in the money. He didn't care about prestige. What mattered was proving that his method, Jeet Kune Do, was the most effective approach to real combat. He wanted to test his ideas against some of the toughest men America could offer. On a rainy Tuesday evening, he drove himself to the base. No security, no entourage, just Bruce, a gym bag, and his student Dan Inosanto. When they entered the officers' club, the mood shifted instantly. This wasn't a dojo. It was a gathering of the Pacific Fleet's elite. Crew cuts, crisp white uniforms, arms thick with muscle. Cigarette smoke hung in the air. Glasses clinked, then stopped. Bruce looked small in comparison, almost delicate. One retired officer later wrote that many of them thought it was a joke. They believed they already knew how to fight. They wondered what this kid in Chinese pajamas could possibly teach them. Bruce sensed the skepticism. It didn't discourage him. It fueled him.
He walked to the small platform in the center. He didn't bow. He didn't ask permission to speak. He set down his bag, removed his jacket, and rolled up his sleeves. His forearms were solid and defined, veins standing out like cords. He scanned the room calmly. He wasn't there to entertain them. He was there to challenge their thinking. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice steady and clear without a microphone, "you are trained to fight like machines, mechanical, rigid, predictable." He let the words hang in the air. "I am here to show you how to fight like water." A few men in the front row laughed. Water? They had no idea what was coming next. Soft, fluid, like water. That's what Bruce had just said. But these men didn't admire water. They admired iron. They trusted stone, strength, impact, force. In the front row sat the man who would ignite the night. Commander Jack the Silencer. 6'4", 240 pounds of solid muscle, 3-time Navy heavyweight champion. His fists were legendary. His temper was just as famous. He didn't laugh at Bruce's words. He stared at him with open contempt. Leaning toward the officer beside him, Sterling muttered loud enough for Bruce to hear, "If he says water one more time, I'm gonna knock him out." Bruce heard him. Mid-sentence, he stopped. Slowly, deliberately, he turned his head and locked eyes with the towering commander. The room went quiet. The air felt charged. The lecture was finished. Now came the test. Bruce smiled, but not politely. It was the calm smile of someone who had just found his target. "Commander," Bruce said evenly, "do you have something you'd like to share with the class?" Sterling stood up. His chair scraped hard against the floor, the sound cutting through the silence like a rifle shot. "I'm done with speeches. I'm done with philosophy. In the Navy, we don't fight with metaphors. We fight with fists." He stepped onto the small stage. The wooden boards groaned beneath his weight. Now he stood less than a meter from Bruce, blocking the light. "Show us what your water can do against a real punch." The trap was set. The doors were closed. And in that moment, Bruce Lee no longer looked like a guest speaker. He looked like a man about to pass judgment. Most men would have stepped back. Standing next to Sterling was like standing next to a cliff face. He wasn't just big, he was battle-trained. His knuckles were thick and scarred from years of hitting heavy bags, and likely more than a few opponents. The size difference alone was staggering. Weight classes exist for a reason. Sterling weighed out Bruce by nearly 110 pounds. In a real fight, that kind of gap can be devastating. If Sterling managed to grab him, if those massive arms wrapped around him, speed wouldn't matter. He could crush him. The officers knew it. Some leaned forward, eager to see the Hollywood actor embarrassed. Others felt uneasy. Dan Inosanto, standing off to the side, later admitted he tightened his grip on Bruce's gym bag. He believed in Bruce, but he also knew one clean punch from a man that size could end everything. But Bruce? He didn't step back. He didn't tense up. He didn't blink. His arms hung loosely at his sides. His breathing stayed slow and steady. His eyes moved calmly, measuring distance, reach, posture, balance. He wasn't emotional. He was calculating. "You want to fight," Bruce said quietly. It wasn't a question. It was a fact. "I want to teach you a lesson, son," Sterling sneered, rolling his shoulders. "Let's show these men the difference between the movies and real life. No cameras, no stunt wires, no director yelling cut. Just you and me." Bruce gave a slow nod. He calmly adjusted the cuffs of his kung fu jacket, folding them back with careful precision. "Very well," he said softly, "but I need to know, are we sparring for points?" Sterling exploded with laughter. "Points? We don't fight for points. We fight till someone can't stand." That was exactly what Bruce needed to hear. The rules were clear. There would be no referees, no time limits. No second chances. The conditions were set.
No rules, no referee, just violence. Very well, Bruce replied calmly, until one of us can no longer stand. The room felt smaller, heavier. This was no longer a lecture. It had turned into an unofficial duel, right there on federal property. Bruce took half a step back, and then something changed. The relaxed posture was gone. In its place was tension, coiled, controlled, ready to explode. For the first time, the officers noticed it. He shifted into his fighting stance. Right hand forward, chin tucked, knees slightly bent, rear heel light. He looked like a cobra lifting its head before striking. Sterling, on the other hand, raised a classic boxing guard, hands up, elbows tight, chin down. It was textbook form, strong and disciplined. Against a boxer, it would have been nearly flawless. But he wasn't facing a boxer. "Go on," Sterling taunted, flicking his lead hand. "Hit me. Show me what you've got, movie star." Bruce didn't move. He stood completely still. This was one of his core principles, what he called the art of fighting without fighting. He wasn't freezing, he was waiting, letting anger cloud his opponent's judgment. 5 seconds passed, then 10. The silence became painful. Sterling grew irritated, and irritation led to the mistake. He mistook patience for fear. "Coward," he spat. Then he lunged. It wasn't wild, it wasn't sloppy, it was a clean, sharp left jab designed to snap Bruce's head back, followed by a crushing right hook that had dropped countless opponents before. The combination was fast, powerful, proven. But to Bruce Lee, who was fully alert and reading every micro-movement, it looked slow. This was the moment that separates skilled fighters from legends, the instant when time seems to stretch. Witnesses later claimed they never saw Bruce move. 1 second he was there, the next, the entire angle of the fight had changed. Bruce didn't step back, he didn't block, he moved forward, he intercepted. Sterling's jab missed by a hair's width, brushing past Bruce as he slipped inside. At the same time, Bruce's front hand snapped out, not as a swing, but as a lightning-fast back fist. The sound echoed through the room, not a dull thud, a sharp crack, bone striking bone. The strike landed clean on Sterling's temple. His head jerked sideways, confusion flashing across his face. His forward momentum stopped cold. 2 seconds had passed. Sterling tried to recover. Even dazed, he was dangerous. He attempted to swing his massive right arm, one punch that could have ended it all. But Bruce was already inside his guard, inside the danger zone. Before the punch could land, Bruce's leg shot out in a vicious low kick. Crack! The kick smashed into Sterling's front knee. A deep groan escaped the commander as his leg buckled under his own weight. Nearly 240 pounds suddenly lost structure. The tower began to tilt. A collective gasp filled the room. 200 hardened Navy men stunned into disbelief. The heavyweight champion was being taken apart, and Bruce hadn't even broken a sweat. But he wasn't finished. He didn't pause, didn't admire the damage. He flowed from the low kick straight into control, trapping Sterling's arms tightly against his chest, neutralizing the boxer's greatest weapons. For a brief second, they stood inches apart, face to face. Bruce looked directly into Sterling's eyes. There was no anger there, no rage, only intense, razor-sharp focus. "You're too stiff," Bruce said quietly, and then it ended. The trap was complete. Sterling was off balance. His knee was damaged. His arms had just been controlled. A powerful fighter, now stripped of his advantage. Bruce released Sterling's arms. In one smooth motion, so fast it was almost invisible, he placed the fingertips of his right hand lightly against Sterling's chest, just above the solar plexus. To most of the men in the room, it looked harmless, almost gentle, just a touch.
but a few trained martial artists watching from the back knew exactly what they were seeing. This was the setup, the legendary 1-inch punch, not the show version used for demonstrations, the real one. Bruce rooted his feet into the floor. The force began at the ground, through his heels, up his legs, through his hips, and out through his fist in one connected chain. He didn't pull back, he didn't wind up, he simply exploded forward. Boom! The sound cracked through the room like a car door slamming shut. Sterling didn't just stumble, he lifted off the ground, 240 pounds, airborne. He flew backwards several feet and crashed into a row of metal chairs. They toppled and screeched across the floor like bowling pins, scattering. The giant commander flipped and landed in a heap near the second row, at the feet of a stunned admiral. Silence. Thick, total, unbelievable silence. Dust floated in the air above the platform. From the moment Sterling had called him a coward to the moment he lay buried in overturned chairs, 10 seconds, exactly 10 seconds. Bruce Lee stood in the center of the stage. He didn't chase his opponent. He didn't celebrate. He calmly returned to a neutral stance and adjusted the cuff of his sleeve, smoothing out a wrinkle as if nothing unusual had happened. "Water can flow," he said quietly, his voice slicing through the silence. "Or it can crash." He glanced toward the fallen chairs. "Be like water, my friend." A groan came from the pile. The spell broke. 2 Navy medics rushed forward to help Sterling. He was conscious but dazed. His eyes were unfocused. When he tried to stand, his legs trembled. He looked at Bruce, not with anger, with fear. It was the look of a man who had faced something he couldn't understand. Around the room, officers sat frozen. These were men who had seen street fights, boxing matches, real combat. They knew violence. But this was something else. This was precision, timing, control. This was mastery. Then, slowly, applause began. It started at the back. The base commander rose to his feet and clapped once, then again. Another officer stood, then another. Within seconds, all 200 Navy officers were on their feet. The applause thundered off the walls. It wasn't polite, it wasn't forced, it was respect. In that room, rank didn't matter, pride didn't matter, only truth mattered, and they had just witnessed it. Bruce didn't bow dramatically, he simply nodded. Then he walked over to Sterling, who was being helped into a chair. The room grew quiet again. Was he going to mock him? Rub it in? Bruce knelt down beside the man who had challenged him. He placed a hand gently on Sterling's shoulder. "You are strong," Bruce said softly, so only those nearby could hear. "Very strong, but strength without flexibility is like rigor mortis. You were stiff before the fight even began." Sterling, still breathing hard, looked up at him. I didn't see it," he admitted. "I didn't see anything." Bruce smiled. This time it was warm. "Next time," he said, "don't look with your eyes, look with your mind." That moment changed everything. If he had walked away after the knockout, he would have been remembered as a tough fighter. But by kneeling down, by teaching the man he had just defeated, he showed something greater than power. He showed wisdom. And that is what separates a legend from a master.
Bruce hadn't stepped into that room to embarrass Commander Sterling. He stepped in to break something else: limitations. After the fight, the mood inside the officers' club completely changed. The smirks were gone. The doubt disappeared. Even the arrogance had melted away. For the next 2 hours, Bruce Lee had the full attention of the Pacific Fleet. But he didn't just throw punches and kicks, he broke things down. He explained how power really works, how force travels through the body, how balance creates strength, how timing defeats size. He showed them how to use an opponent's momentum instead of fighting against it. He demonstrated what he called a no-telegraph strike,
a punch thrown so cleanly and directly that the brain doesn't even have time to process danger before impact. He invited volunteers, big men, fast men, confident men, and he played with them, not to mock them, but to teach them. He placed a handkerchief in a volunteer's hand